Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it is greatly appreciated. As always, we thank everyone who has taken some time to listen to the podcast today. We do understand that you can be utilizing your time to do something else, so we are appreciative that you're taking that time to spend with us. As always, if this information is valuable and you find it to be enlightening or worth sharing, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast and turn on notifications. That way you will be notified when each episode is released. And we do put out a new episode each and every Friday, which is heard on all podcast platforms. And then we put a video out on YouTube every Wednesday as well for those who would like to watch the podcast. But in any event, we say welcome and welcome to the People's Voice podcast. So today I would like to get into the topic of ageism. Today I want to talk about ageism. And I want to talk about ageism because I was recently at a conference. And during the conference, a stat was thrown out about homelessness here in the United States. And what was said is that the leading group of individuals who are experiencing homelessness more than any other group, age group wise, here in the United States, are individuals 55 years and older. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, I thought it caught me off guard because, again, and this is an assumption, but my assumption was as individuals get older, they're more stable in their finances, careers, things of that nature. So my assumption would be that age group would be, in terms of housing stability, would be more stable. That was my personal assumption. Once I heard that stat, of course, I've got to look it up. I've got to, dig into it, first of all, to find out if it's correct. Then secondly, why is that happening? So as I was researching that, one of the causes that I learned for why people 55 years and older are experiencing homelessness at a greater clip than any other age group here in the United States. When I did the research, one of the contributing factors to that is ageism. And ageism, specifically when you start talking about opportunities in the workplace. So that's why I wanted to talk about this today. So today I'll talk about ageism, and specifically ageism in the workplace. I guess in order to start, first, let me go ahead and give a definition for what ageism is, because I don't want to assume everyone knows what that terminology is. But ageism, and I'm just reading a definition here from one of the dictionaries online. It says ageism is a prejudice or discrimination against individuals based on their age, particularly affecting older adults, but also impacting young people. It involves stereotyping, negative attitudes, discriminatory practices, which can lead to health and well-being consequences. Now, after reading that definition and hearing the correlation or the reports regarding the increased amount of homelessness amongst individuals 55 years and older, it definitely allowed additional light to be shined on that for me. In terms of the reporting itself, so HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Department, here in the United States, did a study on this last year in a report. They did a report called the Annual Homelessness Assessment Report that they have to present to Congress. And in that report, it was noted that not only were people 55 years and older experiencing homelessness more, but overall, it says here in 2024, the number of homelessness actually increased and was the highest ever recorded in the United States. In this report, it says that a total of 771,000 people in the United States experienced some form of homelessness in an emergency shelter, safe haven, transitional housing program, or in unsheltered locations across the country. And it in this report, it contributes that increase to a number of factors, including the lack of affordable housing, rising inflation, stagnating wages, also persisting effects of systematic racism, to name a few. But in that same report, they also talked about the number of individuals who were experiencing homelessness over the age of 55. And in that report, it says about 1 in every 5 people experiencing homelessness on a single night in 2024 was age 55 or older. It goes on to say that more than 104,000 people experiencing homelessness were between the ages of 55 to 64. And then an additional 42,000 people were over the age of 64 years old. But it says here, which I thought was probably the most disturbing piece of this report, it says nearly half of the adults aged 55 or older were experiencing unsheltered homelessness in places not meant for human habitation.
Now, the question I raise is this America?
And so when you see homelessness here in the United States, particularly when you start talking about in places that are not designed for human habitation, that becomes truly concerning. It should be concerning for everyone, but I know it's definitely concerning for me. And when unsheltered in places not meant for human habitation, this is, I mean, you start getting into, when you see people living under overpasses for highways, you see people living in the middle of doorways or in street alleys. When you start talking about major metropolitan areas, when you see people living in tents in the middle of, who knows what city or town. So this is a huge problem that needs to have more light, I believe, shined on it. But as I was stating, one of the reasons why this is occurring is because of ageism in the workplace. I was reading an article from Forbes, and Forbes kind of went through this, where they talked about ageism in the workplace. And it says the title is Ageism in the Workplace, Accelerating a Future of Poverty. And they talk about this report that I just talked about. They also talk about different cases where ageism has already been documented from major companies here in the United States, and where where lawsuits have been settled. But in this article, it talks about ageism in the workplace is a real thing. This is not something that's being made up. And I'm going to talk about different ways about how ageism actually looks or how it occurs. But here in the United States, there is an act which is called the Age Discrimination Employment Act of 1967. And it was put into place to protect workers who are 40 years and older. And I laugh because the fact that this law was put in place to protect people who are 40 years and older is a joke, right? The fact that you can be aged out or be discriminated because of your age because you're 40 years old is insane to me, right? Because, I mean, keep in mind, here in the United States, the average life expectancy here in the United States is 78 years old, 78.4 years old. So when you start talking about discriminating against someone because they're 40, it's like, well, like, you can't be serious, man. But in that same article, it details other cases that have already occurred here in the United States where older workers have had to sue in class action lawsuits and other lawsuits because they were affected by ageism. In the article itself, it talks about 3 cases. It talks about an IBM case where it says IBM settled several age-related class action claims after the EEOC found it guilty of firing almost 100,000 older workers to hire younger ones.
Men lie, women lie, the numbers don't.
So, and then it also goes on to say that Eli Lilly settled an age discrimination lawsuit for an undisclosed amount just 2 months after the company reached a $2.4 million settlement with the EEOC. And then it also goes on to say that PricewaterhouseCoopers paid $11.6 million in 2021 after a settlement after the company was found to have discriminated against older applicants by recruiting on college campuses and only posting associate positions on school-affiliated job sites. And that's just one of the ways that ageism can occur. Matter of fact, there was a report done on, or a story done on CBS Money Watch, where they talked about this very fact. And I'm going to play this piece here where the reporter talks about the different ways that ageism occurs in the workplace. So I'll play that, and then I'll talk a little bit more about, you know, some of the other effects as a result of ageism, and then we'll close out from there. But this is from CBS Money Watch, where they talked about this very topic.
Force this not happening?
I think because it's hard to define, right? What does ageism look like? It looks like all sorts of different things. It could be unintentional, and it could be blatant, or it could be a little bit more hidden. I mean, things as small as putting, words in your jobs description that are looking for tech savviness or digital natives, or, asking for graduation dates on a resume, or denying someone whose resume is too long, thinking that they've gone too in depth. All of those things can sort of subtly push away someone who is older if you're asking for someone energetic or that sort of thing. The job search site Indeed has done some analysis on this. And so it's hard to pinpoint, which also means it's hard to enforce any sorts of regulation against this. I think if you've been discriminated against. I mean, it's probably a personal feeling on a case-by-case basis, but if any of these things are happening to you, if you feel like you're not even getting your foot in the door and you see other folks who are, I think that's when older workers or older applicants start to feel like, it's something about them specifically that's keeping them from getting that job.
And, those are all great examples. And these are different ways that ageism occurs. And I wanted to play that piece because, because a person may, not get a promotion, they may think, well, that's the only way ageism occurs. Or if they get fired, they think ageism. But no, ageism happens at every level of the working process, as the reporter noted there. It can start just basically in the application process where they're asking for information of graduation dates. They're asking for full work history. They're asking for, dates of, I already said dates of graduation and things of that nature, or they're putting in their word search or how they design the job posting, they're wording it in a way that it would not be marketed towards an older candidate, right? They might say something like only looking for candidates, or the job requires 2 years of experience, or things of that nature, to kind of discourage older workers from possibly applying for these positions. But this problem is very real, especially when you start talking about within the workplace, as I have noted already. In addition, it's mind-boggling, right? Because especially here in the United States and really around the world, but here in the United States, you're constantly hearing that there's a hiring issue in terms of getting qualified candidates. And the fact that you have a population that is aging and the life expectancy is growing every year. Matter of fact, the life expectancy in the United States as of 2023, I think I said before, was 78.4 years. The prior year to that, it was 77.5. So every year, life expectancy is increasing here in the United States and really for many countries around the world. But to go back, the fact that ageism would still occur, even though there are many unqualified, or at least there's been a major hole in qualified candidates applying for positions, is mind-boggling that age discrimination would occur when you have the benefits of having not only a workforce, but a workforce that is oftentimes proven to be very productive. Matter of fact, I was reading an article from the Association of the American Psychological Association, where they talked about, some of the benefits of having older, or some of the benefits of becoming older. And in this report that was on their site, it says that one study of older adults, for instance, showed that they were better than middle-aged adults at orientating their attention and ignoring distractions, which, is a huge problem, especially for younger generations, because they're so fixated on their devices that getting a productive day out of them can oftentimes be a challenge. In addition, it says getting older affords other benefits. It says as people age, they tend to become more agreeable. They are more conscientious. Older adults tend to be better at regulating their emotions. And these are all positive changes that can lead to an overall greater social maturity, which is, again, noted here from an article from the American Psychological Association. So there are benefits to obviously having workers who are older, more seasoned, to have them in these positions to run an organization or to contribute to an organization. Just to close out, not only is ageism affecting or has effects on people's financial stability and obviously their career, but it also can affect them in other ways as well. I was reading an article from the Association for Society Employees, or employers. Was that association? Oh, excuse me, American Society of Employers. Excuse me. And on their site, they talked about some of the effects, the health and emotional toll that can be felt as a result of ageism. And in a survey that they conducted, it says that in a survey conducted in 2024, 1,000 U.S.-based workers who were age 40 or older were surveyed. And they found that 90% of the respondents said they experienced some form of ageism. But in terms of the emotional and health toll that this can take on a person, it says out of that survey, 45% experienced isolation and loneliness, 44% reported depression, 36% experienced anxiety, and then it goes on to say that 25% stated it caused them to engage in unhealthy habits, including drinking, poor dieting, and smoking. And then last but not least, it says 20% reported it negatively impacted their confidence and self-worth, which, again, all can lead to a person not only dealing with these issues, but also ultimately maybe leaving their jobs. And all of the studies that I read through shows how long it takes much longer for a person over the age of 40, and definitely for those over the age of 55 to find a replacement job once they leave a job or they're fired. And it can take months or even in some cases years before they can find not only adequate employment, but employment relative to the employment they lost or that they left. So, listen, this is a major issue, and I want to make sure that I put some light on this, because the increasing amount of homelessness for older adults should be a concern for all of us, but ageism as well has to be highlighted as well. And it's mind-boggling to me because the president of the United States is 78 years old. The president before him was like 81, 82 years old. So it's, ageism is very selective. I'll just say that, because if you think someone over 40 is too old to be in your corporation or run your business, and you have the president of the United States pretty much at the life expectancy age, and the president before him even older than that, I think it's okay for someone to over the age of 40 or 50 or 60 to be an employee at your organization. So for those employers out there who may have practiced in ageism. But that's my time for today. That's what I wanted to cover. Like I said, this information came to me, so I said I definitely got to talk about this on the podcast today. But that's my time. If you want to leave a comment, you can reach us at the People's Voice Podcast on Instagram. You could also reach me at I am Trey Evans on all social media platforms. And please leave a comment. Love to follow up and get your feedback and your thoughts and see where things go from there. But as always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the People's Voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.
I am Trey Evans, the People's Voice.